All right, ready for a deep dive?
Always.
Today, it's the Beatles. We're going to see what we can learn from this episode of Easy English Podcast.
Okay.
And by the way, did you know that Rolling Stone magazine picked Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band as the best album ever?
Oh, yeah.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
So let's see why they're so legendary.
Okay.
Okay, so picture Liverpool back in 1960.
Okay.
Two teenagers, John Lennon and Paul McCartney, started a band.
Mm-hmm.
They called it the Quarrymen.
Mm.
Not quite as catchy as the Beatles, is it?
Well, it was named after their school, Quarry Bank High School.
Ah, I see.
But they did change their name to the Beatles
Good choice.
before they went to Hamburg, Germany.
Hamburg.
Yeah.
To play in all those kind of gritty clubs.
Yeah.
It's a far cry from those nice clean-cut mop tops you see in photos.
Those were important days for them, though. Those Hamburg days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they were playing, like all night long.
Oh, wow.
Just constantly refining their sound.
Yeah.
Really, really developing their stage presence.
Right.
And, really just building that wrong energy.
Yeah.
That became such a trademark of theirs.
It makes you wonder how those late nights in those smoky clubs shaped their sound and their connection as a band.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then in 1962, they got Ringo Starr to join them as the drummer.
Oh, okay.
And that's how we get that iconic lineup.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to think what would have happened if they'd had a different drummer.
Yeah, you're right. It's like every little piece had to fall perfectly into place.
Yeah.
And then with Ringo on board, they released Please Please Me.
Uh-huh.
That was their first album.
Yes.
That was in 1963.
Yep.
That's when Beatlemania started, right?
That's when it exploded.
Really?
Oh, it was huge. It was this massive cultural explosion.
Wow.
Like you can imagine, crowds and crowds of screaming fans.
Oh, wow.
People fainting. It was almost like a religious experience for some people.
Wow.
It was really intense.
That's wild. I mean, it's hard to wrap your mind around that level of fame and that kind of global impact.
It's really hard to imagine.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the music either.
Oh, okay.
They really represented this kind of like youthful rebellion against all that post-war conservatism.
Right.
Their style, their attitude, everything about them really resonated with that generation.
Yeah.
That was looking for something new.
It's like they tapped into something much deeper than just like catchy tunes. They became a symbol.
Yeah.
They were a catalyst for change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as the world was changing around them, so was their music.
Mm-hmm.
Between 1963 and 1970,
Okay.
they put out 13 studio albums.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a lot of output for such a short time.
They were experimenting with different genres, pushing the boundaries of what pop music could be.
It makes you wonder how they kept that momentum going.
Yeah.
And, navigated the pressures of fame. And also, all those creative differences that always come up.
It really is a testament to their individual talent.
Yeah.
And their ability to challenge each other creatively.
Mm-hmm.
But, even the strongest bonds sometimes, they fray.
Yeah.
Under pressure.
Right.
And in 1970, they went their separate ways.
I bet that was heartbreaking for a lot of fans.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Yeah. What do you think led to that decision?
Well, there are lots of theories.
Okay.
Some people point to the fact that, there were some creative tensions.
Yeah.
Others talk about the business pressures and, just personal conflicts.
Yeah.
It's probably a combination of all those things.
Right.
They were all evolving as people.
Yeah.
Exploring different artistic paths.
Right.
Maybe it was just inevitable that they would end up going their separate ways.
It's like that saying,
Yeah.
all good things must come to an end.
Yeah.
But their legacy,
Yeah.
their impact on music and culture,
Yeah.
I mean, that lives on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So even though John Lennon was tragically killed in 1980,
Right.
and then we lost George Harrison in 2001,
Yeah.
their music, it still continues to inspire.
Oh, yeah.
And it influences so many artists.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Paul and Ringo are still making music.
Yeah.
Carrying the torch.
Yeah.
But before we get into their later years and their solo careers,
Okay.
let's go back to the Easy English podcast episode.
Okay.
They use the Beatles story to highlight the past simple tense.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty clever.
It's brilliant. I love that they do that because it makes grammar so much more engaging.
Yeah.
When they're explaining how the band was formed.
Yeah.
They use simple sentences like, John Lennon and Paul McCartney formed the band in Liverpool in 1960.
Right.
Simple, clear.
Yeah.
And it perfectly demonstrates how the past simple tense works.
I think it just makes you realize that even something as, kind of dry as grammar can really come alive when you've got the right context.
Yeah. A good story.
Yeah.
And speaking of stories, the Easy English podcast, they mentioned another musical icon that was really important for the Beatles' journey.
Ah, Elvis Presley.
Elvis, the king.
Yes.
They were huge fans when they were teenagers.
Yeah, they were.
Like a lot of kids growing up back then, they were swept up in that whole energy and rebellion of rock and roll.
Oh, yeah. Imagine them in Liverpool.
Yeah.
Listening to Elvis records.
Yeah.
Dreaming of having that same kind of fame.
Yeah.
It's really powerful, the idea of inspiration.
Yeah.
And having those role models who spark our imagination.
It's like a torch being passed from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
And for the Beatles, they took that torch and they ran with it.
They did.
They created something completely unique.
Yes.
Revolutionary.
Yeah.
But we'll get more into their musical evolution in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. Welcome back.
Now let's get into their music.
Okay.
It's such a vast catalog. Where do we even begin? It really is. Well, we know that their sound evolved a lot over time.
Yeah.
But those early days in Hamburg,
Yeah.
they were really heavily influenced by American rock and roll.
Oh, yeah.
Like, think Chuck Berry, Little Richard.
Yeah.
You know, those raw, energetic pioneers?
Right.
The Beatles were soaking it all up.
So they started out by doing covers.
Yeah.
Paying tribute to their heroes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, learning the ropes before they went out and did their own thing.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. But even in those covers, they were adding their own personality to it.
Yeah.
That spark, that made them special.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have the arrival of the Lennon-McCartney songwriting partnership.
Oh, yeah. What a powerhouse.
I know, right?
Yeah. It really changed songwriting, didn't it?
Oh, for sure.
It wasn't just about writing catchy melodies.
Yeah.
Although they did have a lot of those.
So many.
Yeah. But their lyrics, they started to explore these deeper, more complex themes.
Yeah. They weren't afraid to look inward a little bit.
Right. Like think about Help or Yesterday.
Yeah, great examples.
Yeah. They hint at a depth that goes beyond your typical pop song.
Yeah, for sure. We were talking about feeling vulnerable, longing, introspection, you know, all those things.
It's like they were saying, hey, it's okay to feel these things.
Exactly.
It's okay to acknowledge this complexity.
Yes, exactly.
And then musically, they were masters of harmony.
Absolutely.
Those close, tight harmonies, they really became their signature sound.
Yes.
It's instantly recognizable even today. You hear that blend of voices.
Oh, yeah.
It's the Beatles.
Yeah. Their voices are like woven together.
Yeah.
Creating this tapestry of sound.
They didn't stop there, though, did they?
Oh, no.
They kept experimenting.
Oh, yeah.
Pushing those boundaries of pop music.
They did. Their sound got richer, more layered.
Okay.
They started to incorporate things like folk and classical music and even some Indian music.
Really?
Yeah. The sitar especially.
Okay.
It added this mystical Eastern vibe to songs like Norwegian Wood.
It's like they opened up this whole new world of sonic possibilities.
Absolutely.
I think that's what's so fascinating about them, that constant evolution, that creative spirit.
Yeah. They never wanted to stand still.
Yeah. Always pushing themselves, always searching for something new.
Always looking ahead. And albums like Rubber Soul and Revolver,
Yeah.
that's when we really see that change happening.
Okay.
They were bolder, more experimental. And then Street Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Oh, yeah. That's the one.
That changed everything.
Rolling Stone called it the best album ever.
Right? They did.
What was so revolutionary about it?
Well, first of all, it was a concept album.
Okay.
A whole complete piece of art.
Right.
It takes the listeners on a real journey.
Yeah.
Musically, it was just this explosion of sound and textures.
Yeah.
They were really using the recording studio as an instrument in itself.
Yeah.
Experimenting with things like tape loops, backward recordings.
Wow.
And all sorts of sonic manipulations.
You mentioned tape loops earlier.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of how they actually used that?
Sure. So in the song, Tomorrow Never Knows,
Okay.
you hear this swirling, psychedelic background sound.
Yeah.
That is created with tape loops.
Wow.
They're manipulating and layering them to create this otherworldly effect.
Yeah.
It was groundbreaking.
Really?
For its time, totally.
It's like they were painting with sound, creating these sonic landscapes.
Yes. that no one had ever heard before.
It's incredible.
And they weren't just pushing the boundaries with sound.
Oh, okay.
They were doing the same thing lyrically.
Okay.
Exploring social issues.
Yeah.
Philosophical themes.
Yeah.
Psychedelia.
So they were tapping into all those cultural shifts of the 60s,
Exactly.
reflecting those changing attitudes, those anxieties of a generation.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the Vietnam War,
Right.
the Civil Rights Movement,
Yeah.
the growing interest in Eastern spirituality.
Right.
All of these things were influencing their music.
It's no wonder it resonated so much with their audience.
Oh, this whole generation was questioning everything.
Yeah.
Looking for new ways of thinking.
Right.
New ways of being.
New ways of living.
Exactly.
And then, beyond the social and political context, there's this timeless quality to their music.
There really is.
They wrote about love and loss and hope.
Yeah.
The search for meaning.
Yeah.
Those are things that connect with us no matter how old we are or where we come from.
Absolutely. It's a human experience.
It's like they created a soundtrack for the human experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, capturing all those universal emotions that connect us all.
Yeah. And their music, it went beyond borders, beyond languages.
Right.
It was a global phenomenon.
It was.
Beatlemania. It swept across the world.
Yeah.
Uniting people.
Yeah.
Through that shared language of music.
I mean, it's incredible how much they accomplished.
It is.
Such a short time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They packed a lifetime's worth of creative output into, a decade?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's amazing.
It really is. And their influence, it went way beyond music, too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Their fashion, their haircuts, their attitude, it all had this ripple effect on pop culture.
They weren't just musicians. They were trendsetters, style icons, cultural revolutionaries.
Yes.
And their influence on musicians that came after them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's undeniable.
It's massive.
But we'll dive into that more after a quick pause to gather our thoughts. We're back, and we were talking about the Beatles' legacy.
Yeah, they really changed the game.
They did, didn't they?
They showed that pop music, it can be more than just, fun, light entertainment. Yeah. It can be art, it can be poetry, it can even be a platform for talking about social issues.
Right, and I think about all those singer-songwriters that came after them.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Carole King.
Oh, yeah.
They were all pushing the boundaries, too, lyrically and musically.
Absolutely.
And I think you can hear the Beatles in their work.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And the way that the Beatles weren't afraid to try different genres.
Right.
It made it easier for others to experiment and blend different styles.
Yeah.
They kind of made it okay to mix pop, rock, folk, even classical music.
Right.
Something we kind of take for granted these days.
We do.
But it wasn't always like that.
And all that studio experimentation.
Oh, yeah.
They really made the recording studio like a creative playground.
They did.
I bet there are tons of producers and engineers still today who look back at albums like Sgt. Pepper's and just go, wow.
They must.
It's amazing.
It's like they opened up this whole world of possibilities with sound. Things like multi-tracking tape loops, backward recordings.
Right.
They were doing all of that, and then it became these standard tools that everyone was using.
You can hear their influence in so many genres.
I know.
Psychedelic rock, progressive rock, even electronic music.
It's mind-blowing how many artists they've inspired.
It really is. And it goes beyond the music, too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were right at the forefront of this big cultural revolution that was happening all over the world.
Yeah.
Their clothes, their hairstyles, the fact that they were interested in Eastern philosophy, all of that helped shift people's attitudes.
It's true. They were more than just a band.
They were.
They were a phenomenon.
Yes.
Reflecting and shaping the times they lived in.
They gave a voice to this generation that was really wanting change. They wanted peace. They wanted a world where everyone was included and treated with kindness.
And that message of peace and love, it's still relevant today.
Oh, for sure.
Their music reaches across generations.
It does.
It reminds us how powerful it is to be united, to understand each other, to imagine a world where we celebrate our differences instead of being scared of them.
It's a pretty powerful legacy.
It is. They showed us that music can be a force for good in the world. It can help make positive change.
It can.
And even though two of them are gone now, their music lives on.
It does.
Inspiring and bringing joy to new listeners all the time.
And that's the amazing thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Their music, it's timeless, it's universal. It speaks to us no matter how old we are or where we come from.
It does. And that's something to celebrate.
It is.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Beatles, I have a question
Okay.
for you and for everyone listening. If you could ask Paul McCartney or Ringo Starr one question, just one, about their time in the band, what would it be?
Oh, wow. I think I'd ask them about that moment when they first realized that what they were doing, it was bigger than them.
Mm-hmm.
That it was going to last. It was going to have this huge impact on the world.
Wow.
What about you? What would you ask?
Gosh, that's a tough one. I don't know, so many things I'd love to know, but I think your question is a really good one.
Yeah.
I mean, just thinking about that moment gives me chills. What about all of you listening out there? What burning question would you ask these legends?
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments.
We want to hear from you.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Beatles.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope you enjoyed exploring their music, their legacy, their impact, because they really were an extraordinary band.
They were.
Until next time, keep the music playing.